Her concern also, of course, will be to protect the Union. Now, she is non-political, a constitutional monarch, but the outcome of this election raises questions about the Union, and we do know that that is a concern of hers. She was crowned, she's often called Queen of England. She's not Queen of England, there is no such role. It was done away with 300 years ago with the Union of the Crowns. She is Queen of the United Kingdom, head of state. She is concerned about the Union, and I'm sure that that will feature in their conversation.
Controversially, of course, David Cameron breached the confidence when he spoke after the result of the Scottish referendum, when he told her the outcome and famously said she purred down the phone when he told her what the result was.
Yes, and I'm sure Boris Johnson will be very careful about that. I mean, he nearly made a mistake about that on an earlier occasion, but yeah, it is a very private conversation.
OK, well, the police are lined up here. The Queen is in the palace awaiting the arrival of Boris Johnson, and he is due here shortly. For now, back to you, Emily.
Thanks, Joanna. I wonder what defines the timing. I'm sure nobody keeps the Queen waiting. So is it about her logistics then, or is it sort of, last minute cutting of hair and
there was famously an election back in 1970 when Edward Heath won, when people weren't expecting it to, when it was Ascot week, when the Queen was at Ascot, and Heath, having won the election, had to kick his heels and sit off to tea until the Queen had returned.
If anyone could be late, it would be Boris Johnson, wouldn't it? But it does appear that on this occasion he tends
sort of a new suit, or the ironing's done.
It is a new dawn, is it not, as someone once said. Yeah.
And it's interesting to know, Nicholas Witchell was just talking about the kind of issues that will come up, not just Brexit, but presumably for the head of state of the United Kingdom, how she looks at this result in Scotland and the huge gains for the SNP, which would appear to put Scottish independence back on the table at some stage. That will be an uncomfortable conversation for the Prime Minister, won't it? Yes,
it's easy to forget that, she is Queen of Scotland as well,
yeah,
as of the United Kingdom, as well as of England. So obviously the Prime Minister will be wanting to reassure her that, as we move into the next stage of the Brexit process, which is the trade negotiations, that obviously Scotland's interests are going to be properly protected. But Scotland is part of the United Kingdom. It's the United Kingdom that's leaving the European Union as a whole, and therefore Scotland will have to come along with the rest of us. And the same is true in Northern Ireland. There are sensitivities there that the government will have to be careful about, particularly as Northern Ireland is going to be treated slightly differently to the rest of the United Kingdom. It'll be important for the government to breathe fresh life into the Assembly, to get the Assembly up and running again, and make sure that Northern Ireland's politicians, whether they're nationalist or whether they're unionists, do feel fully involved in any differences of treatment that there are for goods flowing across the Irish Sea.
I think it's probably maybe a longer road for the SNP through to another referendum than it might appear when you see that big sweep of seats, and they had a fantastic night in Scotland. Can't gainsay that. But what it provides, I think, for Boris Johnson is a kind of challenge. Does he go down? We've seen what happened when New Labour felt that the rise of Scottish nationalism, they went the route of devolution. Now, you could argue that they either didn't go far enough if you're on the side that tends towards Scottish nationalism, or you could say you kind of fed the beast. And one of the things I think that Boris Johnson will be considering...
Don't give them an inch, because they'll take a mile.
Do you give them an inch and say, look, at some point another referendum, or indeed more devolution, which might be another way of dealing with it? There's an interesting point here, which I'm sure that the Queen will be very well aware of, as the constitutional monarch, very sensitive, I think, on the Scottish question, by the way. I have heard that she does raise it quite a lot, is that the European Union is not very keen on secessionist movements at the moment. It's had Catalonia, which is obviously found to be something of a risk to the idea of the EU and to the cohesion.
A risk enough to jail the perpetrators.
Indeed. So this is a much more complicated question, whether there's a route through. But Boris Johnson will have to have a plan for Scotland. I don't think he could simply busk it. That's a little bit brought David Cameron too close to the brink of losing Scotland, and I think he would say himself he was a little scared by how close it got the last time.